Hi, folks. Rick Wedell here. I'm the Chief Investment Officer at RFG Advisory in Birmingham. Today is Monday, February 1st, and I figured it was about time for us to chime in on the whole GameStop, AMC, and I guess this morning's silver phenomenon that is roiling the marketplace and making headlines. But to start with a little bit, I think it's important to focus on how exactly this is happening. I'm not going to explain the exact details of the way that this works, other than to describe two things that you need to understand. The first is that when you buy a certain type of options contract, you require the market maker on the other side of that options contract to go out and purchase an extraordinarily large quantity of the stock in order to hedge the position that you have just created on their balance sheet. This is not really, super well understood. When you buy or sell a stock, there's a seller on the other end of the transaction. There's a buyer on the other end of the transaction, and there's only one share of stock that moves back and forth between that buyer and seller. When you purchase an options contract, there is generally a market maker on the other side of that trade that is interested in making money on the insurance contract that you just purchased or sold. And so they go out and do a very complicated process of hedging their exposure on the other side of it using various fixed income and equity securities to create that hedge. And in certain circumstances, it requires them to buy a significantly large portion of, or significantly large number of shares of the stock that you just bought the option on. And our good friends at Reddit understood this. Those are the individuals that have been pushing prices around. The second thing that happens is that there are what I will refer to as hedge fund hotels, which are stocks that are widely shorted by the marketplace. These are typically companies that may not be in the best of health. They are companies that may not have a long-term business model that everyone is sort of signed off on. GameStop sort of falls into this category, where there's a real question as to why, in an era where I can download literally anything to my phone, why I need a retailer that specializes in selling software is unclear when you can download all that stuff for free. And with these companies and stocks, there tends to be, a large number of people that want to bet against the company. And those people are called short sellers. And when they do that, they go out and borrow shares from an institution and they sell them into the marketplace, which increases the float. And they have a kind of a negative share count, if you will. They've made a bet that the company's stock price will go down. Reddit put all this together, or certain users on Reddit put all this together, and they basically decided that if they went out and bought a whole ton of options on a stock like GameStop, which is a pretty small market cap to begin with, they could generate a massive amount of buying activity on one end of the trade. And that would push the stock price up to the point where people who had shorted it might want to cover their positions because they started to see big losses on paper and they might need to sell in order to stop the bleeding, if you will. And when short sellers need to stop the bleeding, that means that they need to go out and buy more shares in the marketplace. And so it becomes a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that there's a run, what's referred to in the industry as a short squeeze. And that's what happened with GameStop. That's why it's up about 1,200% this year, or at least was closer to the peak. There is absolutely nothing in the video game market over the course of the past 30 days that would have changed to suggest that GameStop is now worth 12 times more than it was when we started the year. But in the short term, the market is a voting machine. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. But in the short term, if there are a large number of buyers and not that many sellers of the stock, you can get dramatic price movements, which is what the Reddit users created. So, is this a big deal? Well, it kind of depends on your perspective. The first thing that I will point out is no, it's not really a big deal. The market cap of GameStop at its peak was $11 billion. That is a lot of money, don't get me wrong. However, the market cap of the S&P 500 is $33 trillion. So if you're sitting at home and you're looking at your retirement account and wondering what impact does GameStop have on me, unless you actually own the shares in a single name type format, the answer is Not a whole lot. In fact, it's just absorbed by the random noise of the movement of the market in any one day or the next. So, in terms of whether or not it's a big deal to you, the answer is probably no. Is it a big deal in the context of the overall market? Well, it's a big deal to GameStop. Certainly, the executives that run that company, if they're smart, they might be able to use that elevated market cap to issue some equity. It may be a big deal to some people that have some algorithmic trading, quantitative trading models that tell them to go buy stocks if they increase. It may be a big deal if you are one of the other companies that are on this list and you're concerned that your market cap might be manipulated. Certainly, I understand that Reddit has turned their attention to silver this morning. And certainly, if you are a company that may need to buy silver futures, it may be a big deal for you. And so I'm reasonably confident that the industry is going to step in to regulate this type of behavior and basically regulate it out of existence. The regulators generally frown on intentional manipulation of markets. And to the folks that are doing this, I would just caution you that it may be a difficult reckoning when it actually comes along. So will it get fixed? Yes, it probably will. Is it a big deal to you as a retiree? No, probably not. Is it something that you should speculate on? No, probably not. You're certainly not the one that wants to get left holding the bag when the Reddit users decide to move on to whatever the next stock is that they want to pump up. So with that, I hope we've explained, at least in a little bit of a nutshell, what's going on here and why it's not something that you should be overly concerned about. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or to your advisor. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks.